Why don't you tell everybody what you drive every day? This is
I
fantastic.
love that you love this so much. It's such a
It's
nothing.
like my favorite thing in the world.
I drive a Honda Ruckus, a 2008 Honda Ruckus that's 49 cc's. It's so reliable, and the gas price is nothing, like comically low. Almost every time I've filled it up, I've taken a picture of the gas, because it's like $1.36. And you're like, what? And I've only filled it up maybe 10 times ever because it just goes forever. But for whatever reason, after this last winter, the muffler is not working so good, and it is so loud. It is so loud. It's like a biker gang is coming up, and then the sound is just like so out of keeping with the look of me on this like tiny, black like Ruckus.
So you would say it's more of a ruckus nowadays?
It's a Ruckus.
The Sarah Sharp, preeminent deal attorney for accounting practice acquisitions.
Yeah, because it's like a real engine to it.
Y'all think too small, I got big dreams. You just starting, I'm way ahead at the end scenes. Started reading and dodging all of the quick schemes. Money like your Spotify, boy, I got 10 streams. Be real big, I gotta make it just for my kids and for their kids' kids.
Hi, I'm Daniel.
And I'm Sarah.
And this is Acquisitive, where we talk about deals that failed to close or deals that struggled to close and the red flags that we can learn to watch out for from those failures. This is episode 12, and Sarah and I are going to talk about $0 down and how expensive $0 down can really be.
It's more expensive than money down often. It's costly.
Yeah, you should probably just pay, I think.
Yeah, I mean, if you can pay some money down for a business and you choose not to, that's one thing, but it can be quite costly. So, Daniel, give some context. What is a zero money down acquisition?
If you're online, which I know some people are, and you're looking around social media.
Every single person watching this, for instance.
Yeah. If you're watching this, then you've probably seen an ad from an influencer saying that you can buy a business for $0 down or 0% down. And it's like one of those things that is true-ish. So, the whole thing is like get an SBA loan, put $0 down, buy this business that's cash flowing hundreds of thousands of dollars, and you're off to the races. That's all of a sudden your money. You're like instantly rich for $0. And the problem is that it's incredibly nuanced and also not actually real, literally speaking. And we'll get into all that.
Really in the weeds, that the way in which you can do the zero money down for an SBA 7A loan is to have a seller note. So you get a big cash payment from the bank that you're going to pay them back, and that goes to the seller. But they don't get 100%. They get like 80%. And a portion of that, at least 10, has to be a seller note that is on full standby, meaning no payments of principal or interest for the first 24 months. And at that point, the banks, some banks, not all of them, will consider that is equivalent to you putting 10% down. So it's not like you're not paying the 10% down. You're actually paying the 10% down with interest to the seller. And so that's the functional way in which you can get it. And I have a lot of clients last year who did it. So it does work.
With just 2 years of standby?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but then you've got to pay it back.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, so most of the banks that I talked to, and I mean, they're all different. All the SBA lenders are different. Most of the ones that I talked to said that if it was, and I think this is like a Live Oak thing, but I'm sure they all will make concessions. Like I'm sure they'll all, deviate for certain circumstances. If you have like just a shit ton of cash flow. Yeah. I stuttered because I wasn't sure. I was like, are we cussing on this podcast or are we not? I don't know. But fuck it. Anyway, what they told me was that if you could do seller financing, at least 10% seller note on a full standby for the term, so for 10 years, then they would let that be the equity injection.
Oh, sometimes.
There's also 0% down if it's an expansion loan. So if you own a business and you're buying another business that is the same category, then you can use the value of your business as your equity injection. If you're a manager of a company and you want to buy the company you work for, you have to be like pretty high level, I think, to get that done. To be a manager, you have to manage a larger group of people like in the company to make that work, but you can buy the business for 0% down.
In the bolt-on acquisition style with zero money down, if you have like a accounting practice and you're buying an accounting practice, and that whole concept, it's a little bit, it's kind of hard because a lot of them don't, it's based on, we didn't figure out how to say NAICS, N-A-I-C-S code. Is it NAICS?
I've always said NAICS, but I have no reason for how that pronunciation. NAICS.
Whatever code they put that's your business type has to match, and there's so many of them, it has to match exactly. So that it's really hard to thread that needle.
Especially with accounting, because you have CPA firm is one NAICS code, you have accounting firm is another NAICS code, and then I think tax preparation is a third NAICS code.
It reminds me of a 1031 exchange, because people will be selling a property and they want a 1031 exchange it so they don't have to pay taxes. And then there's such a small window of like when you have to buy the next property to effectuate that they'll buy something that's an insanely terrible investment. And you're like, well, you could have just paid taxes and been better off. And similarly, if you're not going to buy the right company because it has the wrong like NAICS code, and you want to put zero money down, like just come up with 10%. Maybe you shouldn't be taking on this huge of a debt load if you can't.
I think that's the crux of it when you think about why this is a problem. So it's not the 0% down because, there are some ways to do it, right? You can have the seller note on full standby. You could have an expansion loan. Like there's ways to do 0% down, but you still have to pay for a purchase contract. Mm-hmm. You still have to pay for due diligence. You should still have advisors in place. Like where the damage comes in, I think, is when people are committed to this idea of $0 down, meaning $0 out of pocket, which means that they jump through these hoops to get the 0% equity injection, but then also skip the QOE, the quality of earnings. They skip the due diligence steps. They, pull a purchase agreement. They either get a purchase agreement template from the broker or they pull one off the internet, and they just do it without any support. And then, you could speak to this better than probably anybody, but that's just going to end up costing them exponentially more on the back end.
Also, I've had it kill deals just somewhat unexpectedly because it wasn't that common. There were two kind of downstream effects of the zero money down thought process, right? When people were pushing always for that 10-year seller note for the 10%, you would see a lot of deals where people would just pay 10% more than market. And then the seller is very comfortable with holding a note because they just basically got paid 100% at closing, and the 10% note is just a kicker for 10 years from now. And so it inflated the market a little bit for that, which is like not the point of any of this, right? And that was interesting. I do think that that's still the case. I saw a lot more of my deals trading a little bit higher for that reason. And then the other thing was sellers don't really love that when they're looking at a buyer. And so at some point, if it comes out, which it usually does, and I don't like having, secrets. I don't, my whole thing is in professional services transitions, you have to really work to transition the client base, and there needs to be a lot of trust and honestly just rapport and between the parties so that it's the most effective for everyone. And so I don't like having folks lie to each other as a part of it. Yeah. I know that actually is not what most lawyers feel. So if any lawyers listening to this, they're going to be mad at me. No, I want them to be honest. And so I have had a fella who had a zero money down thing. And then the seller was like, oh, okay, you have no skin in this game. I'm not interested anymore, which is a real shame. So that cost a lot. That was quite expensive.
Yeah. I'm conflicted on the zeros, like the no skin in the game thing. Because like, I mean, the down payments, like comparatively speaking, like even at a 5 million, even at the top of this BA, like the 500,000 is like a relatively small number compared to what you're taking on with a personal guarantee. So, I mean, I've had that in negotiations where I was like, yeah, I mean, you may think I have no skin in the game, but like at the end of the day, I'm responsible for millions of dollars.
Right. And in this instance, I generously offered to show my invoice to the other side to show that they had, in fact, incurred cost, which, that goes to your point that like you might not have to put a down payment on your loan, but you still have to do all of the stuff you need to do to buy a business. And it is a more significantly leveraged business than the average. So you should actually be doing more of that than the regular person, not less.
So 0% down doesn't mean $0 out of pocket, right? Even if you can manage to structure it where you're not putting in an equity injection, you still have due diligence, you still have contracts, you still have other things that you're paying for. And it's also really, really hard to do. So 5% down's like pretty typical from what I see when you can like build in some of these other structural components to a deal. But what about $0 out of pocket? Because that's the other thing that like a lot of these influencers are pitching is, going out and bringing in investors to fund diligence, fund contracts, fund the equity injection in exchange for an inflated amount of equity. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's so costly. That's the most expensive money you could get. It's like getting a payday loan. I mean, I do it all the time, so this is against interest. But,
payday loans?
Yeah, I'm really leveraged. No, they have the title to my Honda Ruckus. No, I like help people set up funds and take an investment, and it comes with so much kind of dubious counseling on my part of like, do you want to include these other stakeholders? I think investing in a business buyer is making more and more sense to me as I age, because there's this arbitrage that we're doing of enthusiasm. Like when you're older, you have more money, but you have less enthusiasm and willingness to, make no money and build something. So you're like, well, let me invest in some new person who doesn't have any of the money yet, but still has that, raw entrepreneurial enthusiasm. And I get that dynamic. And I think it's, the way that the world goes around. But if you're that entrepreneur, SBA exists so that you can avoid having to rely on, these investors who often will have a lot of opinions, and they will be off base opinions. And so then you have too many stakeholders to be able to make a lean and smart business decision all the time. I do find that the attraction often to the investors in this context specifically is more of I'll be taken more seriously if I have these people associated with me. I'll have resources because this person with their great experience is present to help and has a vested interest in helping me. And I get that. But I also have seen how, maybe $100,000 investment is enormous to you as an entrepreneur, but to these investors, they're not really willing to grab a coffee to talk about the business at that level. So they might not be as available as you hoped.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's what I've seen too. Having some ongoing conversations now about what it would look like to put together a type of a fund. Not because, yes, I have buyers that want to buy businesses with no money, but not for that reason. But I actually have financial advisors, wealth managers who have accredited investors, clients that want to put some money towards aggressive investments. Like they looked at crypto and decided it's not real. So they, they want to throw a few 100,000 or, up to $1 million, they want to throw a substantial amount of money at alternative investments. And so, yeah, I'm exploring it from that angle because, if the people want it, it's going to become a thing.
Oh, totally. Like I now get it from the investor's perspective. I just don't necessarily get it as much. I understand that the attraction from both sides, But obviously, being a lawyer, I'm going to see the adverse outcomes more than the positive ones. So I'm skewed to say if you can avoid investment from any third party, do it and try it. But I lean towards bootstrapping. I like to have things bootstrapped, but it's out there, and you can. So you can solicit a bunch of investment. You can take the Harvard Business Review approach where you create a search fund and you raise 6 to 9 months of runway, including a salary for yourself, and you go out and you try to buy a business during that process, and you run the deal, and then you have a business at the end. That's very possible, but then you've just got a lot of stakeholders that you have to report to, and it depends on your threshold, how comfortable you are with that. And it is certainly not free.
So I'll tell you why I would do it. And I think this is going to be a really interesting overlap because it's in your space. So with an accounting background, owning a virtual firm, but also having one young child with one on the way, I'm going to trump it. I'm not sharing my tax returns, but I'm probably I was looking at $1 million firms, and the problem with a $1 million CPA firm, that means that the gross was like 800 to $1 million, 1.1. The SDE, the seller's discretionary earnings, the profit is like 300 or 400, which means that the seller is doing a ton of work. There's probably not a manager in place. They're probably managing the team. They probably have some help, but they are the key employee, the key man risk in that scenario. So I would personally, and this is just personal opinion on it, I would bring in an investor, and do have investors that I'm talking to currently that would help me punch above my weight class and get into like a $3 million firm where the cash flow is like closer to $1 million. There are managers in place at a $3 million firm.
Yeah.
Cash flow is stronger. There's more money for like marketing. And the people that I'm considering bringing in are like quickly becoming friends. Like these aren't people, like it's not like I'm just like randomly shopping for money.
They're not your dad's friends, because that's often the dynamic is like, oh, this is somebody my dad knows, and you're like, your power dynamic there is gonna be interesting to navigate.
Yeah, I see that a lot. I do not have that kind of a family structure where
me neither. My dad's friends are not in that position.
Yeah, I see that so often. And yeah, you're not going to have any control over your company if you're letting your dad's friends fund your down payment. But yeah, no, that's how I would get into a deal with zero out of pocket.
I think that's very supportable to kind of shoot over. I mean, I think every single person probably who's bought a house in the last 10 years has had the experience of thinking, God, I wish I had reached more when I bought my house, because now, interest rates were nothing, and now the value's gone up so much, and, and same thing. I think if you need that reach, you'll benefit from it. And that's a very supportable use case. There are lots of really good, investor type dynamics. I don't want to say they're all negative, but I think that the driving force behind it should not be, I don't want to pay any money for this search or for, anything. I think it should be, I'd rather not. This would be good for other reasons. Can't be the only attraction there.
I mean, I love anybody that has an entrepreneurial desire and spirit. And I really hate to say this because I hate when people say it, but acquisition is not a way to get unbroke. If you just don't have money, then you're probably better off keeping the day job, starting to side hustle. Try to side hustle in the thing that you want to buy a business in.
Great impacts for your ability to obtain financing too, if you can show a track record. So that is good. I think probably what you're hitting at there is something I see too, which is without this concept that's being promoted of $0 down, 0% down, just buy a business and you'll be a business owner. I'm running it from the yacht next month. The thought is that that's the way to do it. And the problem with it is it's different than historical approach where you think about buying a business, You raise money to buy a business, you plan to buy a business, you're doing research the whole time, you're acclimating your family to the potential, it's like circumventing that. So I have noticed that my calls with potential clients are like, some of them are, I mean, they haven't even Googled it yet. And somehow they're already in front of me. And I'm saying, so you want to buy a business? Why? And they're like, I don't know. I haven't really thought about it yet. So what's the cost of businesses? And I think I'm not the right person for this. You've skipped ahead in the process a good deal. You need to have this, longer lead up to decide whether or not it's appropriate.
I feel bad because like I said, I mean, we have the Business Buyers Club, right? So like I want to help business buyers.
Yeah.
But on the broker side of things, when I get buyers calling on listings, there's just so many, and they have, they're trying to do the $0 down. I'm going to find an investor. I don't know what I want to buy. I don't have a specific industry. I don't want to do I don't want to do the same thing I've been working in for the last 10 years, even though like that's probably how they would be most successful. Join the Business Buyers Club, but I can't probably help you until you figure some things out.
And that's a great, like, joining the Business Buyers Club is exactly the type of thing you need to be doing to start getting just that general awareness to the process and the options, and self-selecting out of it if it's not the right fit. They're really convincing some folks that you can do this quite easily. I had a call from somebody who was out of country and not licensed in the US as a CPA, and was like, I'm buying a CPA practice now. And I was like, oh, wow, tell me all about that. And they had no idea about how they might accomplish it. They had no awareness of the fact that it'd be quite a challenge to sell a seller on them running it from like a completely different continent. They had just, thought it was just an asset like anything else that you can buy, and it just runs itself and there's no nuance to it.
I don't want to call it a different asset class because storage units are still a business, but it's like kind of like a business real estate hybrid play rather than a CPA firm.
I've been so interested in boat storage. I have my eye on a boat storage place I want to buy.
I know, you mentioned that. Wait, up in Colorado or somewhere else?
Tennessee.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's near a lake, so you don't have to worry about like hurricanes.
I mean,
because hurricanes are a big risk in boat storage.
Yeah, Florida would be a precarious place to have boat storage, but there's a lot of boat storage, a lot of boats. So maybe it's like a cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, you could probably like require them to obtain the insurance or something, but
there you go. Yeah, just add it on.
Everyone's like, boat storage is $1,200 a month. Like, that seems high.
So there's 0% down, incredibly niche. There's a lot of nuance to it, hoops to jump through, and it's still going to cost you money out of pocket for getting through the deal. Yes. $0 out of pocket does not mean 0% down. It's just somebody else is paying the 10%, and you're giving up a lot of equity, probably 1.5 to 2 to 1. I mean, let me elaborate on that because that may be confusing for people. If you're going to buy a business for $2 million and you need $200,000 down, and an investor gives you $200,000, they are probably going to want 15 to just shy of 20%, just enough where they don't have to personally guarantee the loan. But they want an outsized return on their investment. So you're giving up a big chunk of the company for a smaller amount of money.
The terms too, like it's always the dollar or the percentage amount is one thing, but the terms of that equity are also pretty skewed because the investor has all the negotiating gravity starting out, and so you're not going to be able to buy them out, and you're not going to be able to usually dilute them or do any of the normal stuff you could do with a minority investor. They're going to get all the good rights,
and you can typically pay yourself a small salary if you're operating the company, but any profit distributions are going to go to paying back the investor first, which all not negatives. I mean, it's not a bad thing in the right use case. Because like I'm like hearing myself say it, I'm like, yeah, we're like we're trying to paint this picture. I'm like, I'm okay with that. I'll figure it out. But yeah, no, be aware, like, especially if you're buying like a lower margin business that you're not familiar with. I've been in accounting for a while now. So like, that's why I would do it. I wouldn't do it if I was going to buy an auto repair shop that I don't know I can scale.
Right.
Bonus content. So another way to get ownership in a company with $0 down, 0% down is consulting for equity. And I bring this up because you and I have both been offered this lately. And, when you have a skill, when you've been doing something for a decade or so, and you get into the acquisition space, you do tend to run into people who are willing to give up a piece of their company to bring in your expertise. So, that could be a good place to start, getting in with some people, getting a small, 5, 10, 15% in exchange for your services, your experience, and see what it's like to own a business, even if it's a minority stake.
I definitely think it's a good point. I have done it a number of times at this point, but it's never worked out yet for me particularly well. Knock on wood. But maybe that's a much easier lesson to learn. A loss of my time rather than a loss of like $1 million that I've personally guaranteed. So that's good. So I think if you do it, you got to define the scopes really clear. And then personally, the reason I haven't done that more is because of all the resistance that we've already talked about. And I have a fiduciary obligation to my client, and I would never want to suggest that they do something that I didn't think was best for the business. And usually I don't think having very many people on your capitalization table is best for the business. And so if you're a business owner and you start giving equity away, like to all these people, you're going to run out of room on your cap table really fast. And you're not going to be left with very much. And it's very hard to undo. It's very much a marriage. I get a lot. I mean, I've got clients every day calling me saying, I've got this minority owner on my cap table. I want them out of the business. How do I get them out? And it's so sticky.
Yeah, I can see how that could go very wrong. I'll also work for cash.
Oh, interesting. I only work for Bitcoin. That's not true. You're like, I'll take Bitcoin and I'll cash it out immediately.
Yeah. Speaking of weird things to work for, I have a client and I got paid in 2 high-end firearms.
Oh, interesting. I've gotten paid in bourbon. It was recently for an acquisition related to a distillery. And then I've gotten paid, it was partial payment. And then furniture.
Furniture? Why didn't you comment on my LinkedIn post the other day where I was having this conversation? Because
oh, really?
I posted. Yeah, you're probably working.
No.
I posted about all the fun things I've been paid in. I've been paid in cars. I got a 1998 Jeep Wrangler as a payment one time for services.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, it was cool. It was fun. I sold it. Gold coins, silver bars.
Interesting.
Yeah. A signed Muhammad Ali boxing glove.
That's great.
That was cool. It was subsequently stolen from my office a couple years later, but
That's terrible.
I know. Sad.
No, I try to get paid for cash wherever possible because it's
these weren't current. Like this is back in my bail bonds days.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It very much sounds like it.
Yeah.
But
I'm not above it. Nice. I'm not above it though. Yeah. The firearm thing just happened. So
I like it when my clients invite me to their stuff, like their opening parties and stuff. That's quite nice.
Well, thank you for putting a family-friendly spin back onto this.
Yeah, and you're over there just like in a back alley collecting firearms that have the serial numbers scratched off of them.
The serial numbers are still on. They're new in the box.
Sure.
Everything was transferred legally. Hey, I'm hustling here. I'm not at your level.
I appreciate. Am I above on my Honda Ruckus? I'm above you. It's
such a I don't know. It's a crazy world we live in.
Yeah.
I don't have a Honda Ruckus. I'll tell you that much. I admire it. Well, I wish I did.
for the low cost of, I think we established, was it $1,400? You could have a Honda Ruckus from 2008. Like, so maybe accept partial payment for anything you do for that.
Ooh, that's what I'll do. I'm gonna next one I do where somebody can't pay me, I'm gonna see if I can get a Ruckus.
You got to get a Ruckus out of it.
Yeah, I'd be like, can I get on a payment plan? I'm like, do you happen to have a Ruckus?
Do you have access to 49 cc's of raw power? And then you just need to take a flathead screwdriver and just like break that muffler loose a little bit.
This has been episode 12 of the Acquisitive Podcast, where we talked about $0 down, 0% down, how to get a little bit of equity for consulting, and if you should or not. If you got any value from this episode, please like and subscribe and comment if you have any questions about acquisitions that we can answer on a future episode. Thanks for listening.
Big, I gotta make it just for my kids and for their kids' kids. That's wealth years and years. Promise my brother soon as he out and finish this bid, we finna do it bigger.